Well, that was pretty cool. Totally unexpected. I got my own little logo face there, all everything going on. How are you guys doing today? Everything's going good, hopefully. I'm looking forward to doing the show with you today. I was up late last night. I was sitting around trying to figure out what we were going to talk about today, and there really was nothing. Brian and I just kind of tore into everything yesterday, talked about everything that was important going on, and I'm like, how the heck am I supposed to do a show tomorrow with nothing to talk about? So I went ahead and said, well, what's going on? And I happened to look. It was about 8 o'clock last night, and I realized, oh my God, Across the Spider-Verse came out, and that's something that we can definitely talk about. I was originally excited about, well, I enjoyed the first Into the Spider-Verse, which came out. It's been 5 years since Across the Spider-Verse came out, which it took them a long time to do the second movie. I'm not going to lie, and I had lost a little bit of kind of the excitement I had with the first one. You got to remember when Inside the Spider-Verse came out, it was at the same time when I believe Infinity Wars came out. There was a bunch of of superhero movies coming out at that time that were actually really good, and even amongst a bunch of good superhero movies, Into the Spider-Verse stood out. It was actually very stimulating. The animation was something we had never really seen before, and it stood out. The story was great. Good movie. What I can say, and the first thing we're going to do is if you guys are worried about spoilers for the first portion of this show, we're going to do non-spoilers. So it's going to be non-spoilery stuff. I'm gonna show you kind of what we're going to do. Here's my little graphic. We're going to talk about for the non-spoilery stuff. We're going to talk about all these different 8 topics, and then once I'm done with the spoilery stuff, we're going to go into or non-spoilery stuff. Then we're going to go into some spoilers, and that is what we're going to do. All right. Let's see what else we got. Okay, so this is only my second time doing this, so I am still trying to figure out exactly how we want to do it. So before I get into this specifically, I wanted to talk about just kind of in general about the movie. So the movie's 2 hours and 20 minutes long, and for a lot of people who hear that, they go, "Oh, wait a sec, that's a long movie." But let me give you some good news. I never felt like the movie was long. I've sat through quite a few long movies lately, even Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, which felt a little long to me in some parts, and this movie I didn't have that feeling. And I'll let you guys know specifically before we go into the spoiler stuff, so that way you can bow out before sticking around for it. Okay, 2 hours and 20 minutes. It's written by Phil Lord and Christopher Miller. You guys are probably familiar with them. They're both 47 years old, and they've been working together as a team since 2002. They directed and wrote the animated film Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, which actually is a pretty fun little animated film. They also did both of the Lego movies, as well as Ninjago. I am a huge fan of the Lego movies. I love them. I can watch them over and over again. These guys have incredible wit and humor, and they know how to build a movie. They also did 21 and 22 Jump Street, which are funny movies, not nearly on the level of maybe the Lego movies. Something that you may remember them for is one of the few directing teams to actually stand up to Lucasfilm. That's right, they were initially set to make Solo a Star Wars movie. They still have credits on it, but after about 4 months in, they couldn't get along with, they couldn't agree with what Kathleen Kennedy and Lawrence Kasdan wanted them to do with the story, and so they were, I guess, fired. I wonder what would have happened. Maybe it would have been good if they had actually let them run with it, because Solo was not a good movie. Okay. Yes. All right. So at 2 hours and 20 minutes, it doesn't feel that long, like I was saying. I probably could have just kept watching the third. So the third installment, Beyond the Spider-Verse, is going to come out next year. And that was good to hear, because when you get to the end of this movie, and I won't give you any spoilers yet, But when you get to the end of this movie, you're like, okay, am I going to have to wait another 5 years to get the conclusion? And the good news is no, it's actually coming out next year. So let's go into some of the stuff here, and I will actually go through some of the points. Okay, non-spoilery stuff. At my theater last night, I went to the 9:30 showing, and it was still pretty packed for a Thursday night. Was opening night. For a Thursday night, it was pretty full, and the audience response was good in the right spots throughout the movie. The audience actually had kind of a verbal response, and that's a sign of definitely a good movie to come. So, all right, let's go through some of this stuff here. So the first thing about, and you may have remembered from watching the Into the Spider-Verse, that the experience was different. Like the animation is in a style that I just don't think that we've ever really seen before. And this movie just doubles up that experience. It really brings you into it. And the best way for me to describe it is it's kind of like watching a comic book come to life. So what do I mean by that? It's kind of like watching Across Spider-Verse is kind of like what you feel like if you imagine watching a comic book that transformed into a movie would feel like. It's a difficult experience to describe. When you read a comic book, the dialogue is quippy. The animation on screen feels like it's telling more of the story visually than just what people are saying, because that's what comic books need to do with a very little room for dialogue. And so this movie feels like I got the distinct feeling going through the film that I was watching a comic book. I wish there was a better way to describe it. Hopefully you guys can understand that. It's just in some of the dialogue being so quick. The jokes, there's tons of jokes. There's a part in there where it talks about Spider-Man being funny and Spider-Man being a funny superhero, and which is true. Peter Parker has always been funny in all of his variations. But they go through the jokes so quickly. Sometimes you miss them. Sometimes you're still laughing at one while they've already gone through like two or three more. So it definitely, you get that feeling. I mean, it's just visually stunning. I went into the movie thinking, I enjoyed the first one, but I didn't love it. Like I know James Gunn said the Into the Spider-Verse was his favorite superhero movie, which surprised me a bit, because while it was good and while it was definitely interesting, definitely groundbreaking, it wasn't like the best story I'd ever heard, or best superhero story I'd heard. And I got to tell you, Across the Spider-Verse may very well be one of the better, not the best superhero story, but definitely the best one in a long time. Perhaps the best one since Endgame, and we'll go through that a little more later. So it's definitely groundbreaking for the industry. When you think about groundbreaking movies, you have to think about, so 5 years ago, we all walked away from the Spider-Verse saying, wow, that was incredible. And we hadn't seen animation like this. But these movies are kind of like akin to The Wizard of Oz, which took us from black and white to color, right? So that was like a groundbreaking movie. Or 2001: A Space Odyssey, which Stanley Kubrick illustrated as like groundbreaking and significant visual effects and technology, right? That was one of those movies that like changed movies. Or how about Toy Story, right? Toy Story was it was the first realized totally computer animated feature. It had 27 animators and 400 computer modes. And it just changed the way that you could just tell that it would change the way movies were going to be made forever. Right. And of course, you can't forget The Matrix, which is my second favorite movie of all time. And it popularized the bullet time visual effect. You knew watching all of these movies that they were groundbreaking, and that they would probably that others were going to stand on their shoulders to make movies in the future. And that's exactly what this Sony Spider-Verse movies, they're going to do for the future of animation. I cannot tell you, sitting there and just kind of all of the different animation styles that came across. I mean, they managed to capture, as you go into the different multiverses, they managed to capture like the animation style of that time frame or of that comic book or of that, they fused animation styles. They actually had some of the Spider-Man look different than the other Spider-Man in the same scenes because of the way they were animated. It's just incredible. This story is going to give us a lot more. It gives us a lot more Gwen Stacy than we realized we needed, and that's a good thing. You didn't realize at the first movie, of course, that if you go back, that Miles and Gwen have kind of this, flirtatious. They kind of like each other, right? They're friends, but they kind of like each other, and you don't realize till you get into this second movie, how important it is. And we're going to talk more in the spoilery section about Gwen specifically. This movie does family better than Fast X. That's right. It's all about family, as Dominic Toretto would say. This movie is about family. Yes, you're getting a superhero movie where you're going to get all of the great, action. You're going to get all the spider webs. You're going to get all the web shooting and all that stuff. It's going to be fantastic. But it does something else. It really focuses on family. This story is about Miles Morales figuring out what type of superhero he's going to be, and he's doing it in a difficult situation where he feels like, he's trying to be a superhero. He's trying to hide it from his family, right? And yet he has to figure out, what type of superhero he wants to be and how he can incorporate that into his family. At the same time, his family dynamic is trying to understand that he's lying to him, and they need to figure out how that works. And so they really go into the family dynamic. So if you have a family, then this is going to make a lot of sense. And not only do they do that with Miles, but they end up doing that with all of the characters in some way, shape, or form that becomes important to the story point, which we will get to a little later when we go into spoilers. Here's something that's pretty amazing. I was talking about, even yesterday, I think we were talking about on the show, that I can't stand music today. Brian did a poll. Brian did a poll on the Unleashed show that talked about, do you like the music from 1950 to 2020? I don't know why he picked those 70 years, or 2020 to current. And of course, everybody picked the current. But I would say that music today has lost something. It's I know that as everybody gets older, their music kind of, they go move past it, and the older generations, I'm going to be 50 years old this year, and I know you kind of tend to fall in love with your music. My parents, my grandparents, they didn't necessarily enjoy the music of my day either. But I mean, honestly, the music of today is just terrible. It's just awful hard to listen to, difficult. But for some reason, and this is going to sound crazy, watching this movie and the way they use the music, which the music that's chosen is just perfectly tempoed with the editing. They edit on cue, on cut in such ways that I found myself thoroughly enjoying the score, thoroughly enjoying it. And I recognize it's music that is playing today that I could not turn on my radio and actually listen to for 5 minutes. But yet I went through this entire movie and I felt like it related to each other so well in the tone, in the style, in the location. They were able to adjust the music to the different universes they were in and the things that they were doing. It was absolutely wonderful. And speaking of all those characters and all those universes, something that you need to know going into this is that, and this is very exciting because every character, even the background ones, feel fully developed. They really, I don't know how they do it in the time frame that they have allowed. Because this is a really good sign of good writing. We talk about this all the time. Good storytelling, good writing. When you can make someone become involved in the story and enjoy the story in such a way, and develop the characters and make each character have its own depth, where you don't feel like you have any really standby characters. Every character in this thing is actually very important. Let's see here. A couple of things. I just don't want to get too spoiler heavy on here for you, but I will talk about a couple of things here before we get into spoilers. You are going to run across. It does have a villain. It's a you're gonna well what this movie has is a super society of Spider-Man. So you're going to have a bunch of Spider-Man, more Spider-Man than you could ever imagine being in one place, which is very cool, and a well-layered villain called Spot. And we'll get more into him but very important to the entire story, and the villain's going to actually blow your mind because it's going to change in some interesting ways. The cameos and Easter eggs, they're handled excellently. The film didn't even need the Easter eggs to work. It's like a finishing spice to a perfect meal, when the meal would have been great without it. And that's the sign. A lot of things they talk about today are like member berries, and people like needing those and hanging on those and telling stories with use of like Easter eggs. This movie didn't even need the Easter eggs. They felt like they were a perfect topping. Another thing about this movie that you need to know before we go into spoilers is that this movie is a multiverse movie, but it isn't relying on the multiverse to carry the film like you've seen in almost every other multiverse movie. The multiverse is a tool to move forward the characters' personal stories. And where you typically find yourself a bit lost following all these multiverse movies, I just find myself a little bit lost. I'm like, what exactly is happening? Do I need to know like the entire history of these characters, of this, of the MCU or whatever, in order to understand this? And you don't get that feeling here. The explanation of the multiverse is very easy to understand. Understand its function, how it works, and how it relates to all of the characters in the story is very important. And I think we talked about this already but while you get plenty of action and web slinging, the true heart of this movie is the complications of family dynamics. How good is the film when the masks are off? The mark of a great superhero movie is, are you immersed when superhero action isn't happening? Is the movie good? You can go back to one of the Avenger movies when you've got Thor, Iron Man, and everybody kind of in a room just talking, and you go back to that. I can't remember which. I think it was the first or second Avengers movies, and they're not doing any superhero stuff, but you're completely engaged and enthralled into the conversation that they're having and how these characters work together. Same thing happens with Across the Spider-Verse. You get the exact same feeling with the characters. Okay, and we are going to get into it. I think that's pretty much it for the non-spoilery stuff. You are going to get, we'll go into the spoiler section now. But listen, if you're going to bow out now, definitely, I would give this movie a chance. If you haven't seen Into the Spider-Verse, watch that first. Although you don't necessarily need to watch it. Because they do a good job of giving you a little bit of backstory at the beginning of this film. So they actually made this movie so that you didn't have to watch the first movie, I think. So if you don't want to, you don't have to, but it does help to watch it. And I would, to get that feeling, and then just go out when you get a chance to see it. It's worth seeing it in the movie theater. And I do believe it's going to be one of the best, definitely probably the best superhero movie of the year. And with that, we're going to go to spoilers. I'm going to take a look here what we got. Penny asks, do we have any post-credit scenes? Let me see, Penny. I'm going to try to, there we go. I am still trying to figure out how all this works. So here it is in the bottom. Penny, any post-credit scenes? So good news or bad news, depending on, there are no post-credit scenes in this movie. There's no mid-credit or end-credit scenes. And I think that's a good thing, because it tells you how good the movie is, that they didn't need to tantalize you with something to get you to come back for the next installment. There is, if you stick around in the credits about, I would say halfway through, they do give you the title screen for the third movie, which is Beyond the Spider-Verse. So we do get that. Okay, and hopefully everybody's had a chance to bow out before we go into the spoilery section. Let's see if I can make this work. Yes, okay. I'm so proud of myself to make this work. All right, so let's go into some of the notes and what we got here. The movie starts out, this is a big surprise. The movie actually starts out telling Gwen Stacy's story. Shocker, actually. I mean, I fully expected coming in and seeing, and just picking up where Miles Morales left off. But in fact, in this movie, you don't. They came in and they said, we're going to start out the storytelling. And you got to remember, now I am not a knowledge of all Spider-Man things ever. I can't sit here and tell you which episode, which comic book came from this, which comic book came from that. It's just not how I work. I will say that as a child, Spider-Man was my favorite comic book hero. So when I was like 7, 8 years old, I wanted to see Peter Parker. I watched the evening cartoon animated films that came out with Peter Parker turning into Spider-Man. He was my favorite. And it's cool to be able to see the plethora. And when I tell you plethora, I'm telling you hundreds of spider people, right? Just tons of them. And there's so many Easter eggs of versions of Spider-Man that you're going to see that you'll be like, oh my God, I remember that one. Or, and we'll go through a little bit of that. Gwen Stacy is voiced by Haley Steinfeld. She does a really good job, just like she did in the first movie. She comes in, her character is very complicated. What's happening at the beginning of the film is Gwen is trying to, like Miles, she's trying to figure out balance between being, Spider-Woman saving the day in her universe, and also hiding it from her father, Captain Stacy, who's actually on the search, hunting for Spider-Woman. It's fairly complicated, and you can tell she's struggling with it. At the same time, her Peter Parker in her universe is struggling. He's struggling with, and he's her best friend. He eats at her house. They enjoy their time together, and she spends a lot of time with him. But he wants to be special because in that universe, that Peter Parker didn't get bit by the spider. It was Gwen. So he ends up, testing some potion, and he ends up turning himself into a lizard. Gwen doesn't realize that this lizard is Peter, and ends up fighting him. And the gymnasium at school brings down the gymnasium, and Peter Parker gets killed, turns back into Peter Parker, and she realizes, oh my God, I just killed my best friend. She asks him why, why, and he said he just wanted to be special like her. Very complicated, very deeply difficult. Well, at that time, Captain Stacy shows up just as this happens, and it looks as if Spider-Woman, Spider-Girl has killed Peter, and now he's angry, and he wants to catch her and hold her accountable for what happened. Super chat from Dr. Sarah Gardner for $5. Thank you, Dr. Sarah Gardner. Is it about Spider-Man or Gwen? I'm not interested in watching a Gwen movie. I'm tired of these feminist bait and switch movies. Yeah, Dr. Sarah, 100%. This is definitely not a Gwen movie. It's not a bait and switch. I'm with you. Like, I hate it when they do that too. And at the beginning of this, I was kind of thinking, all right, well, where's Miles? What's going on? And I rode with it. And they did such a good job of making you care about the characters from the very beginning. You care about what's happening with Gwen. You recognize immediately her typical spider person, fight. You recognize that this is what all the spider what Peter Parker is always dealing with. How to balance family with being a superhero and doing, trying to save people, but yet you're a villain, but yet you're a hero. It's very difficult and complicated. And I think they do a good job. And the reason why I think they start out with telling Gwen's story is because they want to set that character up, because the rest of the movie is going to go about kind of explaining how Miles is important to the whole situation. And he actually he's really important. And so basically we're following the Gwen story. And we get her story, and then all of a sudden, something happens where she has to fight a character, a Vulcan. I think it's a vulture, a paper vulture from like a Leonardo da Vinci universe, made of paper, and it comes through and it's basically attacking her world. And it's very interesting because she's fighting it, but it obviously came from another universe. Now, if you remember back in Into the Spider-Verse, it was Miles, with the help of his new spider friends, who actually closed down the accelerator and saved, space and time, supposedly at that time. Well, because of this creature, we end up getting more spider people coming into Gwen's universe, which is pretty surprising. We end up with Spider-Man 2000. I think it's Spider-Man 2099. Interesting spider character from the future. His name is Miguel O'Hara, and he's voiced by Oscar Isaac, who, of course, you remember from Star Wars: The Force Awakens. He played the pilot, and Poe Dameron. And he does a great job voicing Miguel O'Hara. You learn that this Spider-Man comes in, and basically what this new Spider-Man is doing is he tells Gwen that he's basically trying to fix the mess that she and Miles made when the multiverse was broken in the first place. And he's basically had to dedicate his entire life to fixing what they messed up. So they go through this entire thing. They basically stop the Vulture bad guy, and it's comical. It's hilarious. There's the Vulture talks to him, and they're arguing. Like Miguel and Gwen are arguing while fighting this Vulture, and as they're arguing, the Vulture says something to them, and they both turn to the Vulture and say, "Shut up," and it's just really funny. In the end, Gwen ends up using all of her spider juice, and she's tired, and her father walks up on her after they defeated this villain, and he pulls a gun on her and says, "You're under arrest." She tells him, "You don't understand." She eventually takes her mask off, and when she takes her mask off, and he sees it's her, he's shocked. He doesn't know what to say. But then he puts the gun back up, and he says, "You're under arrest." And he starts to read her rights. And she can't believe it. Her father's going to arrest her. Anyway, she tells him, "I didn't kill Peter," blah, blah, blah. So basically what happens is she asks Miguel and the other character, Jessica Drew is the other character. You see another spider. It's actually a pregnant spider woman, kind of funny, who's on a motorcycle. And she asks them to take her with them into this spider people society so that she can help. And essentially there's a bracelet that allows them to travel between the multiverses whenever they want, so that they don't glitch like you saw in the first movie when they were glitching outside of their universe. So she ends up going with these guys, and then at that point she kind of goes with them, and then we lose that story, and then we move over to the Miles Morales story, and we get a catch up. There is I do have one criticism of the film, and that criticism is that they kind of retold the story multiple times, and so you do get this feeling of, I kind of wish they would just kind of get on with it. Yeah, I know the story. They talk about him being bit. I mean, I think they talk about him being bit by the spider like 3 times. And so they kind of retell these origin stories. It's done quickly, but it still gives you the sense of, okay, I got it, let's keep going. So there is a little bit of that. But you get over to the Miles Morales story, which picks up kind of in an interesting situation, kind of where Gwen was in the beginning. You have, of course, Shameik Moore, who voices Miles Morales, does a wonderful job. And basically, Miles' parents they're sitting at the principal's office, and the principal, they're supposed to have a meeting with Miles, his parents, to talk about his future, because, of course, he's at this school that they worked hard to get him in, and he wants to, he wants a good future. So they, they're there to talk about what he's doing. And apparently lately he's been a little busy, hasn't been quite doing all of his schoolwork because he's off being Spider-Man. And it's complicated because he can't tell his parents. He doesn't want to tell his parents that he's Spider-Man. Although in this universe, what's interesting is Spider-Man is not considered, wanted by the police, is not a bad guy, not a vigilante. And he actually works with his dad in some elements, and his dad doesn't know it's him. But we go through this movie. He's trying to get to this meeting. He's on his way. He wants to be on time, but he keeps getting stopped. So we get the villain comes in. The villain's name is Spot. It's a very interesting looking villain. One I did not... I was like, okay, but basically the villain is a man who, during the events of the first movie, somehow got turned because of when the multiverse, the machine was shut down, somehow got turned into a one of those devices, like a portal device. Like, he gets these portals all over his body, so he can reach his hand through the hole in his body, and it'll come out someplace else. So we get this bad guy who's trying to rob a convenience store, but he's trying to rob it. He's trying to rob the ATM inside. So he's making a hole in the ATM to reach in and grab the cash, like through a portal, like you saw, like in Star Trek, or in the games, the Portal games, where you fire the weapon through one hole and it comes out another. So he's trying to rob the store, but he doesn't understand his powers, so he's actually making a mess of it. He's doing a terrible job of robbing the store. The ATM machine's like going halfway through one of the holes. It's following through. It's hilarious. And you see that Miles has showed up, to kind of save the day, but he realizes that the villain's not really, he's kind of messing himself up. So instead, Miles starts making a burrito. He's like, you see a burrito being cooked in the microwave. He's not prioritizing taking care of this villain. And the villain ends up not being very respected by Spider-Man. A huge fight ensues. It's very cool. It's very cool the way they fight each other. They go throughout the entire town, falling through these little holes, punching each other, kicking each other through these holes. It's I can't really describe it. It's something you have to see, and it's done really well. But throughout the entire time, the bad guy keeps saying, I'm your nemesis, and then Spider-Man's like, what are you talking about? You're just like, you're a villain of the week. You're nothing. And so which frustrates and makes this guy bad, because he's lost everything. He doesn't even have a face. Like, this villain doesn't even have a face. He's lost everything. And you almost get the feeling that that the villain is like on the verge of not being a villain. Like, he probably shouldn't be a villain, but he doesn't know what else to do. And you think for a second that him and Spider-Man are almost going to be friends, like the way they're talking. It's a strange dichotomy. Very interesting the way it all breaks down. So as they go through, Miles eventually ties him up somehow, and then he ends up get to the meeting and realize that he's got great grades. It's hilarious. They go through, like, he's got A+, A, and then you get down, he's got a B, and his parents are like, you got a B, what? And like in Spanish, I think it was. But we learned that what Miles wants to do is he wants to become he basically wants to become a scientist, and he wants to learn how to crack through the multiverse. because he misses his friends. He misses everybody that he was with. He feels alone as Spider-Man. There's no one for him to talk to. And so he's chosen this path in the future where he actually wants to go into this science so that he can figure out how to get back with them again. His parents are struggling. His parents don't want him to leave Brooklyn. But in order for him to do what he wants to do, he's going to have to go far away to New Jersey, which I thought was hilarious. His mom was upset because he might have to go to New Jersey, which is very close to New York. So they've got this strained relationship. And his parents at this point come to the point realize that he's lying about something. In fact, his principal says, I think your son's lying to you. You realize it. And it makes the mom think. But we end up going through the story, and the whole guy gets away. The villain ends up getting away, and Gwen shows up. Gwen suddenly shows up, and she looks like, and of course Miles is surprised. He's been grounded because he spent so much time trying to be Spider-Man that he's not fulfilled his family obligations. His father is being promoted to captain, which is something that's going to come into play later in the movie. That's very important. And he's even late for his speech, and it's actually very sad and very touching. And I got to tell you, the one thing, as a guy who's 50, almost 50, and I have grown children, I wonder if this movie means more to me because of that. Because I understand what the parents are going through. Like, I know this is from the position of Miles and Stacy and what they're going through with their parents. And so you've got that kid angle. And as a child, I can remember, the difficulty of wanting to strike out on my own, to be my own person, and how you manage that with the dedication and the needs you have to your family. Like, you have responsibility to your family, but yet you're trying to become an individual. I remember that as a child. But now I also have seen it from the other point of view, where I am now concerned about my child's future. I'm worried about, are they going to mess it up? Is everything going to be okay? Are they going to be able to do it? Will they need my help forever? And so I'm seeing what his parents are going through and what he's going through, and I understand both situations. It's something that younger people who watch this, they just won't get out of it. There's no way for them to understand exactly what the parents are feeling. I think we are just blessed, if you're a little bit older, to watch this. And I do believe that for that reason, the movie is going to mean even that much more, because it really dives into that. I was completely immersed in the story. I was completely entertained by the whole time. I remember there was a moment towards the beginning, and when I realized that the movie was going to be good, and I said to myself, I'm sitting there watching it, and I'm like, this is a great movie. And it was somehow the editing with the music, with the way the story movement was happening and the pacing, and I just said, and I said, this is going to be a great film. And from that point on, it just continued to get better and better and better for me. So Gwen is there to meet Miles. She explains to him that she's been working with with the Justice League of Spider people for the last several months, and that she's come to visit him. But she's not really there to visit him. She's actually there because of the Spot villain, who is on the verge of doing something to mess up the multiverse. And she's supposed to be monitoring him. She actually sets up a camera device, and she's supposed to be monitoring him, but she ends up spending a bunch of time with Miles. The Spot is able to do the thing that they were supposed to be watching, that she was supposed to stop him from, which makes the multiverse worse and actually makes him a whole lot more powerful. As a result, Gwen is chastised by Jessica Drew, pregnant Spider Woman, and she has to clean up the mess. She says, please don't tell Miguel, the guy who's in charge of everything, because she doesn't want to get sent back to her universe, because she doesn't want to deal with the problems with her father. So she ends up getting sent off, and just as she goes through, Miles, who can turn himself invisible, he's got several little tricks that other Spider-Men have not had. He's got some special abilities. He follows her through to go to where this is going, and it just gets more interesting. We end up in like a Bali-verse, like an India verse where all the, I think they call it, it's basically Manhattan, but it's India. So it's like New York, but if it was India. And the Spider-Man there is, of course, this good-looking Indian kid who's kind of full of himself, ends up being being a really great character. It's voiced by Karen Sony, Spider-Man India. It was a fantastic scene. I love the whole universe there because Miles Morales shows up and is helping Gwen Stacy try to solve the problem. And what ends up happening is Spot ends up putting a hole. Now, what happened was is the Spider-Man India, the kid who plays the Indian version of the India version of Spider-Man, he has a love interest that is like like the Mary Janes of all the Spider-Man. And of course, her father is the captain of that universe. Well, he's about to be killed, the captain, along with a small child, and Miles swoops in and saves him at the last moment, where Gwen Stacy is telling him not to go. Well, in the end, Spot ends up damaging that universe, although everybody gets saved, and it's like happy times, right? Everybody's happy. They end up, Miles ends up being invited back to Spider Central, the universe from Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, who's running things. He's being brought back to headquarters, and Miles is excited because he's finally going to be brought into the Spider-Man group. He's going to be part of the family. He's going to be out there like saving things. He's excited. He's trying to find a purpose for his Spider-Man. And what ends up happening is he gets there and then he learns the truth. And the truth of the matter is that he is an anomaly. He is not supposed to be Spider-Man. The spider that came into his universe that was accidentally brought in by the Spot, we learn, by the villain of this movie, was accidentally brought in from universe 42. And that spider was meant to bite a spider from its universe, but it bites Miles instead. And because it bit Miles, the Spider-Man in his universe ends up getting killed trying to save Miles. And Miles becomes this anomaly. He's not really supposed to be Spider-Man. And so we learn that all of the Spider-Men are supposed to have this terrible experience where, whether it's Uncle Ben or whether it's Captain Stacy in their own universe, they have this moment where they have to make a sacrifice. Every spider person has to have a sacrifice in order to become the spider person that they're supposed to become. And in the India Spider-Man's moment, that moment Miles stole when he rescued their version of Captain Stacy. And in doing that, Miles actually destroyed the canon. And this is something that I thought was really interesting that they used in the movie. They used a term called the breaking of canon. That's what Miguel is saying the whole time, is that he's stopping all of these anomalies from breaking the canon of these universes, which won't destroy all of the multiverses in the multiverse. So it doesn't destroy all of the universes. If a few get broken, the breaking of canon, the changing of story. We use this all the time. Listen, we don't want anybody to break canon, right? Don't mess with the canon, right? That's what we say in all of these shows. Well, guess what? This is what's happening. So Miles broke the canon, saved the Captain Stacy from India Spider universe, and he broke the canon, and it actually started to destroy that universe. And so we learn that the reason why Gwen wasn't supposed to go see Miles, the reason why Miles is not supposed to be involved, is because Miles is the problem, and they're trying to deal with him. So Miles learns that his father is about to become captain in his universe, which means his father is going to die. And they don't want to allow him to save him because that will break canon. And he's not supposed to break the canon. It could destroy the universes. And they're basically telling all these spider people, including Miguel, is telling Miles, you have to just let your father die. And Miles is like, that is just not going to happen. So they decide they're going to keep Miles there so that he can't go back and save his father, because the Spot is saying, I'm going back to the universe. I'm going to show you, Spider-Man, that you're going to respect me and you're going to understand that I am powerful, and that I am your nemesis. So Spot's going back to mess with his family. Meanwhile, Miles is stuck in Spider-Person Justice universe, and they won't let him out. They're trying to lock him up. It's at this point we should talk a little bit about the wonderful character of Hobie. Hobie, who can only be described as the British Spider-Man, punk rock Spider-Man. I love his graphics. You can go back and talk about some of the comics. He was an Amazing Spider-Man number. I can't remember what the number was, 88 or 800 or something like that. But his graphics are totally different. He's a punk rock Spider-Man. He looks different. The way they draw him is different. It's fantastic. He's almost like the chaos version of Spider-Man. He's the anti-establishment Spider-Man. Down with the man kind of Spider-Man. And he's a fantastic character. He almost steals the show. He actually ends up helping Miles. He's the one who says, this is wrong. We would like to, you can't just give in, right? So he ends up helping Miles in his own way. And Miles decides he's going to escape and try to get back to his universe to save his father. They do a really good job. Wonderful. Lots of action here. He's trying to get away from a whole bunch of Spider-Men. We get to see a bunch of other Spider-Men in a bunch of universes. We get to see the Lego Spider-Man universe. It's pretty interesting. J.K. Simmons voices J. Jonah several times across several universes. And he's the character from the other Spider-Man movies who played J. Jonah. And you see him voiced several times. We get to see Mrs. Chen from the Venomverse. She actually has a conversation with the villain Spot. We see Captain Stacy's death from the Andrew Garfield universe, as well as the Raimi versus Uncle Ben death scene, which are all important. There's tons of little cameos of different Spider people, and I didn't get a chance to do all of them. But one of the things I thought that was really interesting that we should talk about here, and this is where we learn when he's in the Spider-Person city, or whatever you want to call it, we see Donald Glover. Donald Glover is in this chamber, locked up. Basically, all the villains from different that have tried to break the canon have been locked up here, and they're going to be sent back to their universes. Well, Donald Glover appears as a live-action Prowler. So Donald, if you guys don't know this, Donald Glover was the original inspiration for Miles Morales. He actually voiced Miles in the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, and it all started from him wearing the Spider-Man costume from the TV show Community. And the person who created Miles Morales saw that and said, that's my Miles Morales, ended up creating the character based on Donald Glover. So we get that really wonderful Easter egg in the show, which I think you're absolutely going to love. So they end up going fighting. Miguel is doing everything he can to stop Miles from going back. He absolutely doesn't want him to break it. You have the original Peter Parker that came in as a mentor to Miles in the first episode shows up here. He's got a little daughter that also has spider powers. You see he's living his life, but he is on the side of Miguel and the non-breaking of canon. That's his whole point. He's there. He wants to also stop Miles, but in a nicer way. Miguel's rough around the edges. He's got issues. The Miguel Spider-Man was hurt. He lost his family. Through going through these multiverses, he thought that he could, he could basically be a part of one of the other multiverse families to find happiness. It ended up backfiring. He ended up breaking the canon himself, and that's how he learned what breaking the canon was, and that's why he feels so strongly about making sure that it's being stopped. In the end, Miles is able to get away. We should see how clever he is. He gets back. There's a machine inside of the facility that that will actually take any spider person back to their universe. It reads the DNA and sends them back. So Miles jumps into this machine and he's able to what appears to be him being sent back to his universe. We see that he's in his room. They do this very clever thing, which is absolutely wonderful. They do a really clever thing where they show him and they show Gwen Stacy outside of his room. And you see him talking to his mom. He finally reveals to her that he's Spider-Man. Gwen Stacy's outside listening to all this, right? And then we realize on the inside, it's funny because his mom says, "Who's Spider-Man? What are you talking about? Never heard of no Spider-Man." And he's like, "Mom, stop messing around." Miles learns that, and then all of a sudden, Miles' uncle shows up. Now, if you remember from the first movie, Miles' uncle was a bad guy, but he did, love Miles, and he tried to help him and save him in the end. Well, he sees his uncle's alive here. And all of a sudden, Miles realizes, oh my God, I'm not in my universe. The machine sent me to universe 42 because that's where the spider came from that bit me. He didn't get sent back to his universe. He was sent back to the wrong universe, a universe that doesn't have a Spider-Man. But at the same time that we also see Gwen, who had been outside of Miles's window, goes into his room. His parents are there, and we realize Gwen is actually in Miles's universe. And she tries to talk with them, and she's actually being followed by Miguel and everybody else. She tells them she's going to find him for them, and she's going to try to save Miles. We end up back with Miles in the other universe. He goes with his uncle, and oh man, I don't even know if I should tell you guys this. It's such a spoiler, and it's such a the movie's left on a cliffhanger. I'm going to tell you since I said I would, but Miles, the Miles we know, has been basically knocked out by his uncle, taken to a rooftop, and we learn that Miles wakes up and says, "I know you're the Prowler, but you have a good heart," and all this other stuff. And his uncle laughs. He goes, "I'm not the Prowler." Then the Prowler shows up, and the Prowler and Miles are face to face. And the Prowler takes off his mask, and it's Miles from that universe. Miles Morales is the Prowler in Universe 42, and he's not a good guy. And that's where the cliffhanger is left off, guys. That is where it ends. And it's fantastic, really fantastic. I sat there thinking, let's just keep going. I can go another 2.5 hours, no problem. All right, over at Super Chats. Goron Falf, member for 1 month, cast member. Thank you so much, Goron. Appreciate, thank you for being a member. Kenneth LaRoque, gifted 5 Popcast Unleashed memberships. Thank you, Kenneth. Oh, appreciate that. I'm going to figure out, I can't do it this week because Brian's not here to help me and figure it out, but after the Palantir shows on Fridays, we are going to go into the member section and do, some chit chat stuff of other things going on so that I can just kind of hang out with you guys. But he is taking a nap right now, so we can't do that. Yeah, so that's pretty much across the Spider-Verse, guys. It was wonderful. I hope you guys get to see it. It'll be interesting for you guys to watch it and then come back and talk to us about what you think about it. I am going to now talk about box office. 2023 box office movies. First, I want to do, let's take a look at our box office. So I'm going to share. Yes, it worked. It's not close enough, though. You guys can't see that. Brian's going to have to show me how to, go closer on these things. Anyways. Looking at the top box office movies, I just want to give you guys an idea of where this movie sits for me. So, Super Mario Brothers is obviously the top movie right now. I'm looking just at the domestic box office, not the worldwide. Let's do international. Oh, I hate the way they do this. Okay, let's go back to domestic this is the money they make in America right now. The top movie Um, yearly. Oh, it's international. Yearly. I apologize, guys. They don't do international worldwide. Okay, there it is, worldwide. Okay, so right now, Super Mario Brothers movie is sitting at 1.2 million, $1.2 billion, almost 1.3 billion. Super Mario movie. By the way, I knew that was going to happen. It's funny. A lot of I love OMB reviews. I really love Odin. But when he said it wasn't going to make $1 billion, I was like, dude, that is so going to make $1 billion. It's Super Mario Brothers. If that doesn't make $1 billion, no movie is ever going to make $1 billion. And it did. Guess what? Across Spider-Verse is a better movie than the Super Mario Brothers movie. So I wasn't super high on the Super Mario Brothers movie. It was good. It was interesting. It was fun. But it lacked a lot of the depth and heart that I need in a movie. It just didn't have it. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, the second biggest movie of the year. Good movie. A good send-off of the 3 Guardians of the Galaxy movies. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is not as good as Guardians Volume 1 or Volume 2. So I'll tell you right now that Across the Spider-Verse is a better movie than Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Yeah, it's better than Fast X. It just is. Sorry, Fast X. Terrible. I don't like the Fast X movies, but it's way better than that. Ant-Man and the Wasp, not even a guess. John Wick Chapter 4, no. Creed 3, no. Little Mermaid, give me a break. Dungeons and Dragons was a good movie, but no. I would say the next best movie on this list, if you look at this list and you see Super Mario Brothers, Guardians, Fast X, Ant-Man and the Wasp, John Wick, Creed 3, Little Mermaid, Scream 6, Evil Dead Rise, Shazam! Fear the Gods. I would say Air was probably the next best movie. Air. I enjoyed Air with the Michael Jordan shoe movie for the Nike movie. It was not, it's kind of a little slow, but I love the emotion. I love the history. That to me, that was probably the best movie on here up until Across the Spider-Verse. Let's see how Across the Spider-Verse ranks with all-time superhero movies. And I don't know how they're going to pull out. Now, it's possible that the third movie isn't great. Okay, it should be, because these guys, I'm sure they just went ahead and continued making 3 after making 2, and it's hard to do fresh. I'm not even big on superhero movies, guys. I'm not a huge superhero movie guy. I watch them. They're fun. They're interesting. There's ones I love. All-time movies. Original Superman movie. Original Batman. There's some superhero movies I love, but I'm not a big superhero movie guy. It's not even although I will say Zack Snyder Justice League is one of my top 5 movies of all time. So, okay. All right. Well, that's a great movie, though. And when you make a great movie that is not just a good superhero movie, but a great movie, that's great. You also know from me that I'm not huge on animation. I don't watch a lot of animation. I like some South Park. I like a little bit of Lower Decks, but I'm not a big animation person. Forget animation. This is a movie. Feels like a movie to me. Let's go back and look at the top. If you guys can see this, and there must be a way for me to make it bigger for you guys. I apologize that I cannot zoom. Of course, Avengers Endgame's the top of the box office. It's tough to put this against Endgame and Infinity War, because that had a buildup of so many movies. And the payoff and the emotional, the on your left scene, it's very difficult to top that for me. Avengers, Age of Ultron. I'll tell you this right now. That movie's better than Black Panther at number 6. It's better than Iron Man 3. Captain America Civil War, it's a tough one. I like that movie. Better than Aquaman. I would venture to say that not only is Across the Spider-Verse the best movie so far of 2023, that I would rank this movie somewhere, this is tough. Of recent movies, I wish we could go back and do this differently, of when they came out. I'm going to put it in the top 10 superhero movies of all time. How about that? I would put it in the top 10. If you go back, you know, the original Superman, Superman 2, the original Batman, you're going to have a hard time. Those are definitely the tops of my list. Man of Steel, love Man of Steel. You know, better. Those are better movies than this, I think. Let's see here. Yeah, all the other Batman movies, the Christian Bale Batman movies are good, but this is better than those movies. Although I did like the first one, Batman Begins. It's better than Black Adam. Brian won't love that. I think the first Iron Man movie is first Iron Man movie is probably better than this, but it's really close. Definitely the best Spider-Man movie, I think, of all of them. And of course, my favorite, I love the Andrew Garfield Spider-Man movies the best. But this is by far the best Spider-Man movie, I think, that we've gotten. So yeah, I'm going to put it in the top 10. I wish I had made a list of my top superhero movies, but I would definitely put it somewhere around there. I think it's going to do good things. And I think it's going to change. It should change the way we do animation going forward. It's going to be one of those things. Later on this year, I don't know if this will end up being the best movie of the year. I'm very excited to see Oppenheimer and what's coming with that movie. I think it's going to be fun. And I love history, basically documentary type movies. So I'm really looking forward to that. But, you know, they need to consider, at what point does an animated movie, should it be considered for the Academy Awards? I know we don't take the Oscars that seriously anymore, but I got to tell you, I think that the voice acting is incredible. The visuals are incredible. There's no reason that this movie can't stack up against anything else that's out there so far this year. So be curious to hear what you guys think. Let me know in the comments below. I really appreciate you guys supporting me and coming out here. This is only the second one. I know we have a lot of people watching. Somehow I ended up in the Friday Night Tights space, which was probably a dumb thing. I will try to get back here on Fridays at 10 a.m. I think the lateness of last night made it a little difficult. But I'm really happy to see all you guys here. And it's good to see Dr. Sarah Gardner says, movie sounds great. I wasn't going to watch it, but now I am. I'm glad that I could have that impact on you, Dr. Gardner. And hopefully you enjoyed as much as I did, and then we can come back and talk about it later. Of course, if you guys get a chance, go to Discord, go to our Discord servers. There should be a link below, so we can chat over there. We can let us know what you think. Consider becoming a member. And if you show up to our Thursday shows, of course, we've got the whole kit and caboodle of everything going on. That's when you get to play the games that we have. We do the members after show. We will do a members after show, I believe, for this one, and also Brian's popcorn show on Sundays. So if you want to get more of our show, of our channel, check out Brian on Sunday. I think at 2:00 he's going, and he'll be talking about all kinds of interesting stuff happening in the movies and TV. And then we'll be back Monday with the co-star of Mrs. Davis. He's going to be on with us. It's going to be fantastic. And we got a lot more great stuff to come. So appreciate you guys being here. And I love you. Thank you for all the support. And welcome new members. And can't wait to talk to you guys again soon. All right. So have a great weekend. And I'll catch you in the funny papers.